Hey, it's James Governor, co-founder of RedMonk. I'm here today at Build, Microsoft Build 2026 in Fort Mason in San Francisco. I'm here with Kyle Daigle, the developer chief marketing officer for Microsoft. And yeah, we're here to talk a little bit about the event, perhaps my reckons, what you think people should be taking away from the event. So just to kick off, what is a developer chief marketing officer, Kyle?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been a leader at GitHub for quite some time, as you know, and I think for me, the goal in this role is how can we take what developers care about? I mean, like you have to be able to use a tool, you have to be able to understand it, you have to be able to, we have to be authentic about what these things can or can't do, and it's my job to bring our teams together across all the products at Microsoft to ensure that we're coming to you not with, 4 or 5 products on a shelf as much as we can, and instead saying, hey, if you're a developer and you're trying to build software, using agents, here's the complete flow that you need with the ability to go use those products with the documentation, kind of so on and so forth. So developers can't be marketed to in the same way, that other, I think, buyers can, but it is about just, being developer first and making sure that, my teams, as well as the engineering teams, the product teams, the sales teams, know what that means and how we can partner on that together.
So, to be fair, I will say that having arrived at this venue Fort Mason, I've been here for GitHub Universe
Sure.
before,
Yeah.
and I did very quickly get the impression. I thought that Build feels very. I've got here this morning. I'm like, Build feels a little bit more developery
Yeah.
than usual.
Yeah.
So you're hitting the mark. Well
Great.
done.
That's great.
There was a lot of news today.
Yeah.
I mean, 2.5 hour keynote flew by because there was so much news. But certainly plenty to contextualize. I've got some things that I think probably struck me.
Yeah.
So in fact, we'll jump in with that.
Great.
Microsoft has its own frontier models now.
Mhm.
So assuming the benchmarks are reflected in reality, it looks like with these new My models, you're really putting a marker down in terms of the ability to reason, do text, and code, most importantly, in terms of what we're about. Tell me a bit about that when you're trying to get the world to understand that. Why is it so important that Microsoft has its own models?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Mustafa said it best today. I think they're taking an approach where they're starting, or they started, kind of from zero,
Mhm.
and, didn't use distillation. They're not building on top of another model. They're starting from scratch. And there's an advantage of that, I think, for the ability to use these models in unique ways at work, being able to, fine tune these models and know exactly sort of what you're starting with. I think the thing that is more exciting for me is the fact that it's starting at a place that's like grounded in our current token and operational reality. We don't need absolutely everyone to be going after these models that are enormous frontier models that cost a lot per model.
Mhm.
Going into it in a place of saying, hey, performance and what these things can do and how much they're going to cost. Starting there, token efficiency is exciting to me because we're already seeing the kind of push and pull of not everything that can be sent down these more expensive models. At some point, I get the bill at the end of the month.
You're done
You know,
subsidizing.
yeah, I mean, like it's, even for myself, like if I'm using my personal open clause and
Yep.
calling these APIs, it's like, I don't know that I needed that much help to find the restaurant phone number, and I think the MAI models, the thinking model in particular, the Code One model, does like a really, really great job of that. The transcribe model is what's powering the Copilot CLI voice.
Mhm.
And so it's functionality, but with like some rationalization of the world that we're in, and that performance and cost are also a factor, not just what it can do.
Okay, I mean, after Build last year, I said Microsoft needs its own frontier models. It needs that moonshot. You can't be in a position where you're beholden
Mhm.
to OpenAI and to Anthropic. Obviously, they are crushing it in market. I mean, your positioning there is a bit more about the economics, which is super important. But obviously, you've got to have ambitions.
Yeah.
That the models will be competitive with what we're getting from those providers.
Yeah, I mean, as a first showing, for Mustafa to be able to have code one and get it to a 4.6 sonnet as like the first attempt, I think is really strong. And you can see the hill climbing chart that he shared, and they're actually like accelerating the speed at which they're able to bring intelligence to these models. So this is the starting line to some degree, of this new era of models. But to be clear, right, the ambition is not to have, oh, we're the most economic model, or like, we're the ones that are taking in performance solely. I think it's just about being clear that uh, we can have this really frontier
Hmm.
intelligence and be cognizant of how do we do that with token efficiency,
Yep.
and not just look at it from a single
Well, I think
perspective.
the next era, frankly, is going to be defined by. I mean, I've been calling it token economics,
Sure.
talking about token efficiency. We can't keep on burning money in the way that we have been. That's very clear. So, I think that focus. Um, in the keynote today, that was. I mean, there are two aspects of this Microsoft perspective.
Mhm.
One is that full stack, running on your own chips.
Yep.
You've got your own model now. You're not beholden to third parties, first party models. The other one, of course, is this question about uh, running things locally,
Yeah.
which should be a Microsoft advantage. And today, I guess that was one of the key themes. Tell me about that and whether that's realistic. I mean, if the perhaps the inner loop
Yeah.
and the ability to use a model locally.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of the chip aspect of it first, the N1X Spark, and I've been able to use the laptop myself, and
Hmm.
actually being able to use the models that have been coming out locally is such a huge boon. I think it's a boon not just for uh, when I'm working on problem sets that aren't frontier problems, being able to just have that sort of speed or have it in the background has been quite helpful to me. There's been a variety of open source models that we've been using, like Quen in some places
Yep.
for this. There's like internal models that we're testing out, and of course, like the SLM side does this, but developers are looking for, can I run an actual large-ish language model, 120 billion parameter model on my laptop? And where I think I'm most excited is not just having that on device, but also having the Microsoft execution containers on device,
Mhm.
because I would love to be able to run a large language model on my laptop and be able to run a claw that can be used at work because it's fully contained and observable at a work setting.
Yep.
And that is, I think, the unique opportunity that Microsoft is like aiming at, is that I want to have control. Like, I want to be able to work like I do on Saturday, but at work.
Yep.
Uh, and threading that needle where like the devs get to hear about, bringing Claw to Windows and the Windows companion app, etc. Like, that's great. And then, enterprises can hear, oh, well, we have containment, we have observability for your claws or local agents. And then everyone can run it locally. The models are getting so good, whether you're using a quantized one or not. Like, they're very good locally with this device in particular.
I mean, the claw stuff, I've got to admit. I mean, I guess I'm kind of a boomer. I get very nervous
Sure.
about well, just the capability that's there, right? I thought it was very interesting the degree to which you lent into that
Yeah.
in the keynote,
Yep.
where the conceit is, we're going to get the claw to delete everything on my desktop.
Mhm.
Everyone's like, no, but having containment,
Yeah.
so that doesn't happen.
Yep.
So you had Steinberger here,
Yeah.
Peter
Sure.
Steinberger. He
Yep.
was obviously loving it,
Absolutely.
and he did make that announcement. He's like, OpenClaw is now ready to
Yep.
run in your business. I
Yep.
mean, that's a little bit scary, isn't it?
I mean, like, I think that the reason why OpenClaw has been so interesting is that it it feels similar to me like when we were working in like GitHub Copilot in the IDE, and we were asking questions and getting answers or doing autocomplete. And then suddenly you have this like agentic loop where it's, oh my goodness, it's going down its train of thought and going to do some work. I think when we're looking at the like assistant landscape,
Mhm.
it still feels very call response,
Yeah.
and the claw just being able to kind of bring us that same, chain of thought style work with memory, etc., but across not just coding tasks, is very, very exciting. And it helps, whether it's knowledge workers, information workers, folks that aren't day-to-day developers, I think understand the promise of what AI can actually do in like a consumer way. So now if we have a way to give you an experience that is fully personal to you and have observability through like the Agent 365 stack, which you don't need to use our stuff or frameworks or agents, whatever whatever agent you have, you can monitor, and containment. I'm really hopeful that we'll be looking at more people using these like autopilots or autonomous agents or claws to experience the magic of, you know, that we all got to experience at like GPT-3,
Mhm.
when ChatGPT came out.
Yep.
Because I don't think that that experience has been as broadly disseminated as the coding flows, where you ask something and it's, I called all the logs down from the server and I fixed it. Here you
Yeah.
go. We're all still very much on, I think, go find me a reservation. It's like, this reservation service can't tell me if there's any times. It's like, okay, great. And then you kind of like go do it the manual way. Solving that gap and having all the sort of like compliance and governance that Microsoft's great at and our customers trust us for will be, I think, a big boon in the coming year.
Well, I think that's part of my concern.
Yeah.
Right. So isolation, that was one of the themes. You mentioned that your own containers.
Yep, yep.
So talk a bit about that, the importance of having that security model, a spectrum of security. That came through, I think, pretty clearly.
Yeah.
A spectrum of isolation.
Yeah.
In terms of agents and the work we're going to be doing, and particularly, what should developers be thinking about and targeting in terms of the portfolio that you've got?
Yeah. So I mean, I think like starting on the local side, these like at MXC, is focused both on like process level, network level, some adaptations in the operating system to allow this on Windows, and then also bringing to Mac and Linux the same underlying primitives to give you that containerization locally. I think that for a lot of folks, we're, I don't know, feeling the joy and friction of like always local agents, or at least I do. Like, I think it's a ton of benefit. But this morning I was asking my agent to, improve some text that I was writing, and I was like, oh, go run a rubric across this. And then I'm one of those people walking around the backstage with my laptop.
Oh yeah, you gotta keep it open.
Oh God, and I feel like a dummy, and it's just because we haven't been able to like have that same experience in the cloud. I do think now with the hosted environments that Azure can provide for that, or like Azure hosted agents, if you're actually going to build a full agent and do that, I'm excited to see the containerization be not the only reason why you're going to go to the cloud, because in many ways we've all optimized for local because of the lack of containerization, the ability for these agents to feel magical and have full access. Now that we're bringing containerization to local, I think that it will drive us to more seriously look, should this be local or should this be in the cloud? Because either way, we have to containerize.
Yeah.
We can't just sort of take for granted this thing can run roughshod through everything that's on my computer anymore. And in that way, I'm hoping that I'll have containment, but I don't have to walk around with my laptop open for coding tasks or for like my little small tasks. I can just, shoot a message or use remote control and could run on my laptop because that's the modality.
There was so much news today. Because you can also, you have Qualcomm on stage.
Yep.
And you're going to have like,
I really want one of those.
Yeah, absolutely, right? A little claw badge.
Absolutely.
So, that was interesting news.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, like, how much lead time, at this event?
Yeah.
Was any of this news? Like, when did you know about the My stuff? Like, when did you know?
Yeah.
That
Are you asking like how much of this news was produced for the event?
Well, there was a lot. So
I think the like
was it like, oh Kyle, just one more thing, or
so this is the first time when I've been a part of build in this context versus just the GitHub context. And so I would say 4-ish months ago, we kind of went around to the company and said, like, what do you got? And like, why is the developer going to care about it? Like, how do we focus as much as we can on like what's usable, but still be able to paint a picture of where we're going, so it's not just about the tools we have today. And in that process, got to see some of these incredibly cool projects that are both kind of pointing us towards the future, but I think the demo that Stevie did is like a perfect example of something that is actually useful,
Mhm.
versus some of the era of either concocted or parlor trick, AI demos where it's like, I want you to go book a plane ticket, and so everything that you saw today, whether it be the MAI models or the GitHub Copilot app, Discovery, Foundry hosted agents, Toolbox and Foundry, which kind of got a little bit of a passing mention up front. That's all work that was like well underway or like completed. Some of the stuff that we talked about, recently were fully delivered to general availability. The goal here was to kind of stitch it all together as best as we could to paint a picture of you do have the full stack, like you said at the beginning, and we really want to invest in that, kind of developer experience and possibility. Like I'm like was really excited about a lot of the improvements that the Windows team brought through Windows for devs.
Well,
Like
you're going to use Windows now.
I've used my Mac. I've been a Mac user for a long time. I've gamed on PCs. I have a Surface Book, and I switch between the two because I'm responsible for all developers. I have my Armor Key box too, so I can like really cover all my bases. And like jumping into Windows after a Unix-based operating system user for quite some time, running a Unix command or util and it not working was it's just like a piece of tax for me to switch over. And so the thing that makes me excited is, the announcements today may not convince someone that's never like used a PC as a developer to just be like, oh, this is it. Now is the time. But if you do try one of these
WSL stuff, or
I think there's
or
the
just a lot?
WSL stuff. There's PowerShell
So the
now with
WSL
all the
news.
pieces.
Quick. What
Yeah.
was the WSL news? Like we can't expect everyone knows this.
Sorry. So like, yeah, I mean, WSL2 has improvements now with like, you can use the GPUs natively through it. You can have CUDA support. It has containers now, so you can better containerize your environments. It's got Comfort Shell, which allows you to use, Homebrew, Starship, ZSH, like whatever is your normal setup
Mhm.
in those environments versus always feeling like, it always kind of felt like a little bit like a cloud VM to me, where I'm just like on an Ubuntu box or whatever, distribution I was using. And so really deep investments into that side, and then being able to use WSL from across Windows. So if, instead of only being able to pull it up in a terminal, being able to call into it via your other apps, your other processes a bit more easily.
Mhm.
And then in Windows, just kind of all up to being able to have your Git repo information in File Explorer, being able to use, like I was mentioning, the utils in PowerShell, because I'll still generally like open up, a PowerShell environment and then, try to do something and realize, being able to have all that has been really, really good. And then like, Kayla showed here, being able to reach into the GPU and use a local model is just cool. And it works like it says on the tin, at least on like these, newer devices,
Yep.
in the Windows landscape.
Yeah. So talk about devices then, because I think that's one of the. To be fair, I think it's slightly annoying. So we've got these hardware reveals,
Yeah, I
and then
know.
it's like, and you won't get them
And you
until
can't
the
get them.
autumn.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what's
yeah,
that? Yeah, Thatcher saying, yeah, I'm on the waiting list as well.
yeah.
And I'm like, come on. So tell me about, because that's certainly been something that I've been arguing, that
Yeah.
you've got to have like these beast machines to make people be like, okay, I just want to see what it's like from a performance perspective.
Yeah.
So there were a couple of announcements there, but obviously the NVIDIA partnership around Spark and what you've done
Yep. Yep.
there, what's that about?
Yeah, I think, similar to what you're saying, it's the confluence of, hardware, software, operating systems coming together that I think really is what makes this feel special. Obviously with N1X and, the Surface Book Ultra or the N1X Dev Box, that we showed off. that is about ensuring I have the hardware necessary to actually run these models effectively. Or like, there was a cool demo when they were showing it to me a while ago of doing all of that, and they were playing the new one of the newer video game releases that were coming out in the
Okay.
same box without anyone seeing it because it's all the same tech. And I was like, this is great. I want a work device I can play video games on at night,
Uh-huh.
but like being able to have all that hardware, but then also really, really looking at the experience of using Windows 11, just all up with Pavan and team. They've been sharing a lot of the updates and improvements there, but I think I'm most interested in the developer experience side
Yeah,
of that.
I thought that was under debate actually today.
The
I'm
which
gonna
side?
the what when I'm in my mind I'm thinking the developer distro
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
of
yeah,
Windows, right?
yeah, yeah.
That I felt like the question of calm
Yep.
and having something that's not getting in our face, and it's like the anti-clippy, the not to have co-pilots in your face, just to really think about the experience. I thought
Yeah.
that you almost could have you I would have liked to have seen more of the articulation of calmness
Oh, sure.
and not getting in a developer's way.
Yeah.
So where did that work start?
Yeah, so like the calmness idea is like represented here with the developer config, but realistically, like that is something for all Windows 11 users. Like they're improving Windows 11 just to be what like they say, more calm. I can turn things on if I want them, but otherwise not. The main thing with the developer config is a great example of all of our teams working together. Like the GitHub teams working and talking about the devices and Windows 11 and saying, okay, well, when I'm starting a computer as a developer, this is what I'm going to go do next, and making sure that that first run of jumping into a terminal as my first point of entry, I don't have to set up a bunch of config, or I don't have to go into like a totally like unopinionated terminal flow,
Yeah,
or be only able to use one agent versus a multitude. So there's this huge foundation of the Windows 11 team just responding to all the user feedback, in the last few months. And then they realized too that there's this giant cohort of developers that have unique needs, and how can we build for those people in addition to every user? So I'm glad like Com came through, but the real thing we were trying to land is, yes, it's a config now, but you can imagine, in the future that this is just, whenever the next Windows update happens, you're a developer, and this
yeah,
is the config we'll have for you versus needing to go run it yourself. And this is where we talk about this at GitHub all the time, right? There's only so much prescription that I recommend to GitHub or Microsoft all up on what developers do want. And so, like, the great developer config or my dot files may not match yours and the next person's. And so, how can we find that happy medium of enabling devs, but not kind of creating an environment that every dev is going to be using? And they go, well, this is not how I want my box set up. That clean slate to work from is the goal. And we'll see now with this config, how closely we hit the mark.
okay. So talking about meeting a broader set of developers where they are,
Yeah.
there was actually some GitHub news
Yeah.
as well. So we've got the new app.
The new app.
Um, One of the things that I've been really thinking about in my research and sort of looking at what's happening is there's an old saying that it came out of Sun Microsystems actually, and that's that innovation happens elsewhere. And today I feel it's like software development happens elsewhere.
Mm.
So software development used to happen in the developer's editor. Like that was the thing, right? Now it's happening all over the place. There's no reason, I mean, if you look at the work that an Atlassian or a Linear, software development could just happen in issues management.
Yep.
It can happen in any context. Software development is going to be all around us, different sets of users and everything else. Now, I that was one thing that really interested me about the new. What is
Yeah.
the new Copilot app?
Yeah.
And is it part of this world where actually, software development isn't really happening in the editor anymore?
Yeah. I mean, so the new GitHub Copilot app is like an agent first experience where I'm able to like start projects or bring in my repositories, run a multitude of sessions where Git work trees are handled under the hood. I have a like a workflow infrastructure, so I can run automations on my project or across my projects. I can respond to events that happen on GitHub and run automations on my local computer. And I can also use that same technology and use cloud hosted agents. And so I can run and automate those like in the cloud. It provides me the ability to work across, like on the weekends, 3 or 4 different projects simultaneously and still take advantage of all of the sort of underlying, plumbing and tech of GitHub. So create a PR, and then I can say for most cases, like if I'm only working with 2 people, I'll say, great, like agent merge, it'll go review, it'll respond to reviews, and it'll resolve them. Or if I'm working with another person, like I'm currently trying to submit functionality into the app itself.
Yep.
And to be clear, I'm not like day-to-day coding anymore. And so
So now you're just an annoying manager.
and so, well, like the thing that I'm doing is like, okay, I'm using the full pipeline that they have. Like that was the thing that I found so compelling is because obviously the team that's building the app is using all the functionality. They have a bunch of review steps, a bunch of things. So I'm like not that guy because I built portions of GitHub's app a long time. I do not submit PRs to GitHub because I don't want to be that guy. But at least on these newer projects that are starting from that agent flow, where it's going to, it creates an architecture document, does a review of that well before it gets to building my little feature. The app is encapsulating all of that. The thing that I found, it's very new, and we showed it off kind of quickly. Cassidy did a quick demo of like opening a canvas.
How great is Cassidy, by the way?
Oh, she's the best. She's my favorite.
I mean, you knew that before she came. But
yeah, absolutely. I was so excited that she joined us. But like, she does a demo of opening a canvas, and I'll explain that. Like, doing like a thumbs up, and it merges the PR. The canvases are essentially a way for you to build a two-way communication via effectively like HTML, JavaScript, CSS inside of the app with your agent.
Yep.
And so I feel like we've all created some apps that effectively are just taking something an agent does and driving back to the agent. We use these canvases internally to do a lot of the sort of like prioritization and like early review or a bug came in, like how can we break it all apart and explore that and not lose the context in just like a chat session where I'm kind of waiting for the agent to come back. I can actually say, hey, are there any other issues like this? And it'll just show me all the issues and I can attach them. I can be like, okay, these two are clearly the same, this one's not. Having that experience where it's not just about being able to build a great UX for it, it's about when I'm using that UX, my agent knows and can start acting, and vice versa. My agent can say, oh, have you considered this other like interaction modality? And add, I don't know, like say a slider or something on
Right.
Age. That's a really interesting flow for the app that I'm excited for us to kind of see what everyone builds, because those are just code, and code can just be shared. But I do think that if you're the type of person that was using the CLI and either we're only working in one session, or we're multiplexing like crazy and, running a ton of sessions, I just find the app to be so much easier to be able to do, multiple different ideas at once with the containerization we talked about, with the ability to do it in the cloud. And then, we showed the ability to both run, edit. I think we talked about it. You can still just drop out to an IDE or deploy, all from the single application.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an awful lot to talk about.
Yeah.
I think we could go down the whole Git work trees and story. Anyway, worth watching the keynote. I think maybe to finish up a little bit.
Right.
One of the things that Satya's always been about, that Microsoft has always been about, and has been a claim of realizing human potential. This is an exciting time, but it is also a really scary time for a lot of developers. Continued layoffs across the industry, more and more waves of them. People that over the last 20 years would always be able to get a new job immediately are finding that's not so easy. There is some definite fear, uncertainty, and doubt in market. So Today, I think Satya said some things about how models needed to support human potential, how AI needed to support it, and that's right. What can you do? And obviously, GitHub touches pretty much every developer's life.
Mhm.
Microsoft, there's a whole other set of services. How how is the role not yeah? How do you see the role of the developer changing,
Mm.
and how do you make sure that you're supporting?
Mhm.
I think as such as that rather than replacing developers. How does it work from an organizing principle?
Yeah,
And also then how do you market that and make
yeah,
it clear that you're on the side of the developer?
yeah, yeah. I mean, from the earliest time when, we chose to, you know, say, okay, we're going to call it GitHub Copilot. That
Mhm,
that was the principle. The principle has always been about enabling developers to do more. I think the piece that we've really stuck to is developers are in the loop of everything I've talked about today. Like there's every single step we're letting you decide, you choose. If you want to do an agent merge, okay. On what pieces are you okay letting the agent go take control, or what pieces do you still want to retain control and we'll let the agent do the rest? That principle is core to the software flows that we build
mhm,
with at GitHub and Microsoft. I think the thing that we're like investing in and we need to do more of is how can we help developers be able to use these AI native and powered tools effectively and not need to keep up with the just volume of what's coming down the pipe because there's just so much. And I think that's a big part of the problem when we're talking to developers about this. Like we have this like concern that there's just so much to go learn, in a speed in which I don't think we've ever really experienced. Like the last couple big platform shifts have taken much, much, much more time
mhm,
to go from assembly to a higher level language and so on and so forth. Now we're talking weeks to have a whole new idea come and leave. And so our focus and I think our commitment is we can build great tools and then we can make them easy for you to intuit about and not have to know every single model when your employer is saying, hey, choose the right model for you. Great. How can we help you do that? How do we help you review your code with Rubber Duck, to let you help have that kind of side by side comparison across models? Those small things I think add up to a big thing, which is still enabling developers to do the best work, not have to take the cognitive overhead that AI can sometimes bring us in the pursuit of doing more, and then stick to our goal. We're developer first. We're about empowering them in the loop, and then celebrating them when they're building and sharing whatever they ship with us.
mhm. I am going to ask a last question. Actually, I thought I'd ask the last question, but I've got you here,
Yeah,
and I've got to ask you.
yeah,
So, we're talking about all the new stuff.
yeah,
Pretty clearly, you've got to stick to the knitting.
yeah,
Um, as I've got you, like, how are you going to deal with some of the challenges around reliability
yeah,
and some of the issues? Because best will in the world, I do feel
yeah,
I should be authentic. I should
yeah,
ask.
absolutely, yeah,
So, there is some market pressure here. What's how do you how do you deal with that from a North Star perspective? How are you gonna deal with
yeah.
the amount of load that agents are driving? How are you gonna fix some of these issues?
Yeah, I mean, so we've been working on this, uh, really like deeply since around like last October. A lot of it is that we're, increasing the number of CPUs that we need. As simple as that sounds, the scale is so quick.
Mhm,
That's a huge piece. We've been rewriting and improving underlying core systems that do a lot of like the checking and policy where we have a step change moment and not just a very quick scale moment because suddenly, the agents will all show up when rate limits go away and whiz bang boom across the industry. We have a lot more work. So a lot of that has been happening underneath the hood. The core orchestration layer of GitHub Actions has been like very, very, very much improved with way more ability for us to launch the various CPUs and box setups that you're looking for, because I know that's been a big constraint for folks. As new model launches have come in, that's been another place it's been hard, because each model has different characteristics we have to land and at the full scale of policy. And so like we've improved that process a lot. And we're, making really good progress on getting to a, cloud architecture versus just relying on our, our own
Yeah.
infrastructure. And so that includes Azure, that includes like, we've always had a multi-cloud and a physical infrastructure strategy. It's the demand of, ironically, sometimes CPUs, even more so than GPUs, that have been really, really big. So we know like the first thing we're talking about every week in our meetings is about availability, reliability, how's it going, what are our customers saying, how can we meet with them, how can we talk to them. But realistically, we just need to prove it. We need to do the work, we have to ship it. And then I think I really want to get us back to the basics, and I want to talk about it. Like, let's share the tech of what exactly we did, so that way, not as an excuse, but like as two developers do over beers or coffee, explain the hard problem and what they did. So we'll have the first kind of sets of those posts going out from our technical leaders, coming.
People are hungry for that, so that's
100%.
that's great to hear. Great. Well, Build 2026, quite developery, tons and tons of news. It's been amazing to catch up with you, Kyle. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chase.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us too. If you've got any comments, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And that's us. Peace out.